I've watched God heal people like right in front of my eyes.
Have you seen physical healing?
Oh,
in your church
100%.
or in
Yeah.
other settings?
Oh, yeah.
Can
100%.
you give an example of that?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a couple. My wife and I, we weren't able to have children naturally. And it's just kind of weird how God does this, but we ended up, adopting our daughter, and I was always frustrated because as a youth pastor, there'd be kids in the town, in the city I'd live in, and they get pregnant. And I'd be like, God, why are you allowing like 16-year-old girls to get pregnant? And what is going on?
Yeah.
And in the church we're in now, here in North City Church, we had a couple come up to us on a Sunday morning. This is probably 15 years ago. And they were like, we can't have kids. We don't know why. The doctors can't figure it out. Would you pray for us? And I'm like, really, God? Really? This is before we had our daughter. Really, God? Are you like mocking me right now? Like, you want me to pray for these people to get pregnant when we can't get pregnant? Like, it's those moments, right? You're like,
That's tough.
God,
That's tough to
what is
wrestle
going on? But as a pastor, I know my why. I'm called to believe that God can do the impossible, even if I'm not seeing it in my life in the same area. So I prayed like 3 weeks later, Pastor, we're pregnant. I'm like,
Wow.
we haven't told anybody. We just took the test. I'm like, oh my gosh. And it's super humbling, but also challenging for me. So that's one example of kind of right in that space. But we also did a missions trip to El Salvador. We did it 9 years in a row. Missions trips, they're just humanitarian aid trips is what they are. And we were in the capital city of San Salvador, and it was on a Friday night. And we were in the streets, and I was speaking, and we do games with kids, and we did flag routines and dances and music and all this stuff. And then I'd get up and talk with an interpreter, and it was like 11 o'clock at night. And like 35 degrees night in San Salvador. It was awesome. The stars are shining, and like thousands of people hanging out their windows.
That's cool.
And the streets, like San Salvador, were in the area we were in, was really dirty, not nice at all for what you would see in a Western world and with your eyes. And at the end of my message, I talked about how Jesus was the healer, and that he can heal you. And whatever you have, we want to pray for you. And all the way down the street comes this kid, and he's got the arm braces and leg braces. Okay. And he's got those kind of the brace sticks with his arms, and his mom's beside him, and his legs are all bent and twisted, and his arms were like really thin. So were his legs, like really spindly, like just bone.
I think it's like cerebral palsy.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah. We didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
But that's what it would have looked like.
Yeah.
And he walks up. Took him like 20 minutes to walk down the street. And I'm with one of my friends, and he's like, Jason, this mother wants us to pray for her son. And I was like, okay. So I sat down on the curb in San Salvador, right on the curb with we call it street juice. It's just like, there's just stuff in the streets there. I sat right down because I want to get right down close with this little boy. And my friend took the little boy's hands. The kid was about 10 years old. And I put my hands around his legs, like really spindly little legs. And we just started to pray. And I just started to pray, Jesus, you know who this little boy is? I don't know his name. And I was praying in English because I know very little Spanish.
Yeah.
And they had no idea what I was praying. We were just praying in English. This little boy and his mom. And there's like thousands of people on the street with us. And our team from our church, they're praying with different people all over the street. And all of a sudden, as I'm praying, I'm about 5 minutes into praying, just, God, this would just be incredible. And I know you love this little boy, and he is your son before he's this woman's son. And you love him way more than his mom does. And you know what's going on here. And God, I don't know exactly why you brought me down to San Salvador, but maybe this is one of those moments. So Jesus, I believe you're the healer. You can do everything today the same way you did when you were here on earth with us, and everything can happen the same way. So in Jesus' name, be healed. I just pray that these legs would grow and these arms would grow, that the muscles would go strong. And as I'm praying, my hands just start growing like this. His legs start growing in my hands to full muscles.
Wow.
And the mom starts screaming. Just starts screaming in Spanish. And I was like, and all of a sudden the kid starts running circles around the street. And then he books off down the street and the whole street starts cheering because they all know this kid. Wow. And he's running up and down the street and he leaves his crutches in the street. Wow. Just his braces and his crutches and his leg braces, arm braces, they're all left in the street. And to this day, in the church in San Salvador, that kid's now like 25. He preaches on the street himself now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of churches that sometimes you visit as like a tourist attraction almost. They've said that they've become tourist attractions rather than actual like operating churches. But so many people that have left their canes behind.
Yeah.
And things like that, right? So how does that happen in terms of the actual like physical healing? I mean, you're praying, right? And there's all kinds of like schools of thoughts on this, but you're praying and you know, and sometimes you pray and maybe the healing doesn't happen. So like how does the healing happen exactly? Like what's the process behind it?
To add on to that, do you believe in the gift of healing or do you believe in just healing?
I believe in both.
Okay.
To answer your question, I have no idea how it happens because it's supernatural. It's God's doing, not mine. I can't heal. I'm not a healer. God's the healer. Jesus is the healer. So I don't know how it happens. I just know God does it. I've seen people. I have a good friend of mine who, when he was 18 years old, started to lose his hair like really bad. And he was at a church service and he just was totally insecure about it. And he said, God, I need you to stop my hair from falling out. Like it was falling out in clumps. He's basically said, I've not less. And he's now like 70. He has the same head of hair now as he had when he was 18. But in like 6 months, he was going almost all bald.
Wow.
I don't know how it all worked. God just does stuff. Like he's God. I'm not God.
Yeah.
Right. I know it sounds really weird. I'm not trying to make it, Doctor Who stuff.
Yeah.
But it's supernatural. So there's things of it you just can't explain. But God does it. When it comes to the gift of healing and healing, I believe in both. Like I don't believe the Bible talks about there's spiritual gifts that God gives when you get saved. And there are some people who God gives the spiritual gift of healing. So more often than not, when they pray for people, they get healed. I had a really good friend of mine. He's passed away now, but God gave him the spiritual gift of healing. And I would watch him and he'd pray over people. They get healed like all the time. Like,
really? Wow.
Oh yeah. Like they cut their people's casts off and their legs were fully healed. Disfigured legs, people who were bent over for like 5 years and couldn't walk without their head bent down to their waist. And in a moment, they put their hands on them, prayed for them, healed, and they stood up immediately, and they've been healed ever since. Watched crazy things that God's done. But I've prayed for those two experiences, are the only two that I told you, where I've seen God actually do the miracle there. I've prayed for thousands of people and not seen the miracle happen that I know of.
Well, I could see that, maybe your prayer request for your hair didn't work.
Right, and mine obviously didn't work. It wasn't me that I was praying for.
Sorry, I had to take that shot. That was a low blow.
No, you're
I'm
totally.
sorry.
I always tell.
I'm
everybody,
getting there. I had to take that
I'm
shot.
old enough now that I got more hair at my nose and ears than I got on the top of my head.
I had to put it out there.
Yeah.
But on that note, like, do you feel like it's like your friend, may he rest in peace? Like, did he go to hospitals and just start praying on people
Yep.
and they would just heal?
Yep.
Out of the hospitals.
Yeah. They would never let him do it in North America, though.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because they don't want religion to be in there. So he would go to other countries,
And he would go walk into hospitals.
walking on people. Yeah.
People would leave.
Yeah. Dozens of people get healed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you don't hear about that stuff very often just because it goes against such a narrative. Because if you believe that, then it forces you to question all of this. And so people don't want to put that out there because then you have to give an answer. Well, what's the answer? Well, it either is supernatural and God's there, or it's a trick.
Yeah.
Well, let's just not talk about it.
Yeah.
Because then we don't want to have the God conversation.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we do it. And so I've prayed for many people. I only know of two. Now, it doesn't mean other people haven't been healed that I don't know about after I prayed, because sometimes you pray and God heals them like hours later. I don't know if that's happened in people that I've prayed for.